G'day, Star Wars fans all over the place. It's all Dags and Aaron here talking about Star Wars tonight, which is absolutely fantastic. And like outside is almost as hot as Tatooine itself. And there's a lot of Tatooine in this episode. Mr. Aaron, how are you going tonight, old son?
I'm going well. Good to see you. It's been a couple of days since Christmas, actually. So
very good. And so what did Star Wars fans get for a Christmas gift? They got the book of good old Boba Fett. How good is that? Absolutely fantastic. Dropped on the airs yesterday, good old Disney Plus. Millions of throbbing nerds have went and watched it. And, of course, we've got to do as all fans do and give it the once-over as to what we thought of it. And off the top of your head there, Mr. Aaron, what were your thoughts?
I thought it was a good start to an interesting series. I guess I wasn't sure how they were going to go or what direction they would take it. I had some preconceptions in my head, and I still don't know exactly what the story's going to be, but I liked what I saw so far. How about you?
Oh, I'm going to reserve my judgment until the end. I'm just going to keep people hanging, and we'll see how we all go with it all. Good old Mr. Toys, he likes the colour scheme. It's a new shirt. Well, it's actually my jacket, but there you go. All hand done by me. Hang on, just make it so you can sort of, I can flash the wear, so it's all hand done by me, the A-team and all that sort of thing. So it's particularly very, very groovy. Anyway, the important thing is we're here to talk about the old Mandalorian. I'm sorry, wrong show. Freudian slip. Good old Book of Boba Fett. And the key thing you got to remember is, yes, there will be spoilers, okay? So if you don't want to be spoiled, tune out now. We'll go and catch you in a couple of days' time. But if you don't mind and you're just going to get straight into it, then that's what we shall do. And spoilers be damned. So there you go. I know everybody's got their opinions, and feel free to put your opinions through because we're very keen to hear what everybody had to say. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us. We're not sure how many people have had a chance to check it out, and I am aware that some people really don't like spoilers and some people don't care. As Dags has said, we're going to go get it the bantha by the horns and talk about spoilers. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to stream it and watch it, or watch it a couple of times and have an opinion to share with us, because we are interested in other people's opinions as well.
So Michael has said evening nerds, and that's exactly what tonight's going to be about. So a lot of people, when you see a lot of reviews on the internet, they go like maybe for 5-10 minutes and they go, yep, it's great, it's wonderful, go and check it out, right? But we as being nerds, we're going to sort of dissect it a little bit, delve into it a little bit deeper, things that I've noticed, things that Aaron's noticed. Now, we haven't discussed it between the two of us at all, so we've got no idea what our thoughts and opinions are, but we're just going to bring up some random pictures, have some thoughts, and away we go. So, and as Chrissy said, you don't really want to. You really don't want me to say what I really think. You can say whatever you like. This is completely open slather. Whether you liked it or didn't like it, it's entirely up to everybody's opinions. And because there are certainly shows that we've seen, we go, that sucked, but we're still going to discuss them anyway. Because you never know, you might actually discover, there are things about it that I liked, or whatever else. You might learn something completely new. So, all right, let us kick this off. Now, what I've done is I've put some notes at the bottom of the screen. They're primarily for myself, but you can read them if you want. So the show sort of kicked off with a bit of a harkback as to what the whole story was about. And for this particular review, we're breaking up the story the review into two bits. We've got the flashback part first, and then we're going to go to the present afterwards. So unlike the show, which went backwards and forwards, we're just going to start with the past. So we kicked everything off with the old Jabba's palace with a throne sitting on top of Jabba's dais. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron? Did it all work for you at this point?
Yeah, it did. I think one of the key things before we get into the review that I had to get over myself is I have a preconception of the idea of who Boba Fett is and like what this show was going to be about, probably from my favorite appearance, which is Empire Strikes Back. And I guess the character's moved a long way away from that. And I guess that I have like this sort of, ownership of that character from my youth. And seeing some of this is quite interesting and new because it's different from what they've done before. So starting off with the throne from the end of The Mandalorian was a good jumping point because we already had some of that backstory from The Mandalorian. What did you think?
Yeah, look, I agree with you, and I've discussed this with other people, including yourself, saying, look, some people may struggle with what's going on. I mean, even though for decades people said, bring Boba Fett back, bring him back, they brought him back in Mandalorian, now he's got his own show, and some people may not be able to deal with it and go, you know what, I'll just bypass the series entirely, just go back to the original trilogy, keep him a mystery character, maybe even avoid the prequels and the fact that he's a clone of Jango Fett, and just leave it at that. So it will challenge people's perception as to what they remember from the character and what they loved about him to start with, and that could potentially for some people really kind of rattle them in many ways. So because now he's not a mystery, everybody knows everything about him. So
I think I think Disney are probably quite aware of not wanting to ruin a classic character, which is probably one of the favorite characters. And I have a feeling that The Mandalorian, the series we've watched over the last 2 years, probably started out as a concept for Boba Fett. And then they were like, saw the reaction to fans when they brought back the Star Wars movies and were like, oh, hang on, maybe we don't want to go full on and do a Mandalorian Boba Fett show and have people hate a classic character. And I think Mandalorian was probably testing the water to eventually bring back Boba Fett and put him front and center, which is what we're getting now.
Yeah, and that of course then brings up the issue: what happens if you like one Mandalorian character over another Mandalorian character, and you can't help it. There have what do you call it? Similarities, or you sort of judge one off the other, which is probably a bit unfortunate. But I mean, maybe this series may have worked. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but maybe it would have worked another year or two time rather than just straight after the Mandalorian. But there's a couple of really interesting comments that have come through. I like this one from Rico saying, "Yeah, the Jar Jar Binks cameo was a great spoiler." Yep, love that. I agree with Michael. If you're a true fan, you would have seen it by now. Absolutely. So it only goes for 30 minutes, so it's not that long. And Russell, I like this from Russell. He said his feet was frozen. On a hot day like today, being frozen is probably not a bad idea. And Christy said she yawned her way through it. Worked better if it was released before the Mandalorian. I know what you're trying to say there, and you were possibly correct on that one. So there you go. Sorry, hang on. Carol's saying she's watching it now, so she's probably watching it at one screen with the show on, the other screen with us on, which is kind of funny. Sorry, what were we going to say before I move on?
I was just going to say on Michael's comment, I have to say he's totally wrong. If you're a true fan, you'd have watched it 4 times by now.
True. Yeah. Okay. Very, very good. Enrico said about where my expectations subverted. Well, I'll get to that later on as to what my opinions were. So it's I want to keep some surprises for later on. So we saw Jabba's palace. We sort of kicked off with that, and then we get into this room here. And the first thing I thought of is, are we somewhere else? Because it didn't look like the kind of Jabba's palace sort of room, especially with all the curtains. So yes. I kind of got a bit lost at this point. I was thinking, oh, okay, we're someone completely different. But I don't know if you felt the same way or not.
I actually did feel the same way. I thought the aesthetic was more modern Star Wars than Return of the Jedi Star Wars. This looks like, when they were at Dryden Voss's sort of hideout, it kind of had more of that aesthetic to it than the gritty Return of the Jedi. But, the more they've changed the special editions and stuff, the more modern Return of the Jedi has looked anyway. So they kind of straddle that line between, the classic and the new quite well. And then there's a few clips from the movies as well that, really cater for different fans.
Yeah, totally agree. So I think it was all the curtains that threw me off. It just Fett and Jabba and anybody who preceded him, they just don't seem like curtain people, but hey, look good. That's the most important thing. Well, so he's obviously in the back to tank. He's doing the flashback thing. The first thing, one of the things we see is Kamino and Tipica City. I love this because I'm a huge fan of Attack of the Clones. So that kind of worked for me and pushed a lot of my buttons. So what do you reckon, old son?
I liked it because it surprised me. I did think we might get some flashbacks. I didn't think we'd get flashbacks to Attack of the Clones. And it was one of those things I don't think anyone had really predicted. So when it came on, I was like, oh, that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, and there was a couple of them. So, and what I thought was interesting is that you don't realize it until you watch it again, that he's actually looking at a window. And I thought this might have been a point of view shot from Fett just before they all nick off to Geonosis, because if you recall, they had to sort of bail out of there pretty quickly. So, because you got the window ledge along the bottom there, and I actually really liked that. I thought it was lovely. But I'm a huge fan of Kamino and Tipica City, and it really kind of pushed my buttons. So, so that already at the start, I'm thinking, this is working for me, because I had said once upon a time that Disney produced shows were trying to shy away from prequel trilogy related things. It was like the don't go there kind of scenario. And the fact that they were including this stuff, I thought was really good, which then led us, of course, into the flashback of Boba Fett picking up Jango's helmet. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but some people have picked this up already, that even though they've used the same footage from Attack of the Clones, they've removed some things. So the Reek, for example, is missing. This is the Attack of the Clones version down here. The Reek is there, and he's missing from up here. And I don't know why that is. And some of the background characters are a little different. So they've kind of mixed it up, and I'm not entirely sure why they did that. So what do you reckon?
I didn't know that they had actually done that. But for me, I guess in the original version, we're watching George Lucas's vision. And in this version, we're watching Boba Fett's memories. So if his father's just been killed, probably front and foremost in his head is just being a lonely little boy with his dad's helmet, and all the stuff in the background has maybe faded out of his memory.
And for those who aren't sure, it's like, where was Jango's head? When the head is severed in Attack of the Clones, it does actually come out of the helmet. So it's just a very, very quick, blurry shot, but it does actually happen. So there you go. Was it? It's supposed to be Jabba. He's always naked, so he needs the curtains. Yeah, good on you. Actually, you think if anything, you'd be going surprise, surprise, surprise. So there you go. Colin has said, yeah, it was a solid start and a good base for the show. That's good. As I said, we're certainly happy for your opinions to come through. Yeah, so Michael, no, you're wrong. His head was not in the helmet. So as I clarified, that's only Attack of the Clones in the movie. So yeah, otherwise it would have been pretty gruesome having his head bits sticking out the bottom.
I think actually in the director's commentary for Attack of the Clones, George Lucas actually says, "Oh, why doesn't fans say why doesn't his head fall out? Why doesn't his head fall out?" And they say, "Well, if you look carefully, when it's originally decapitated, you do see it fall out to the side."
Yeah, I think they emphasised it for the DVD release rather than the theatrical release, but there you go. And now this wasn't from Attack of the Clones. This is the new bit. It's either a deleted scene or a newly filmed bit. And I found interesting is you can actually see Boba's face in the reflection of the visor. I thought that's a nice little interesting cinematic moment. So it's a bit of a sort of an indication of what's to come. So yeah, upon reflection, boom, tish. What do you reckon? Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did. I was like you were saying, I was sort of looking at it and thinking, was that from the movie or not? And I go, no, it wasn't, because I don't remember that reflection part in it. So I thought it was a nice little touch to blend new footage with original footage so seamlessly.
Very, very cool. So there you go. Yeah, sorry. Yep, Michael. So at least we clarified that. So you're learning something from the show already, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, we get into the juicy stuff, and it really was juicy. They're all inside the Sarlacc. Now it's a dark image, and we sort of know that. The thing that I found funny is that when he put the rangefinder down, there's a torch attached. It's like, who knew there was a light on the top of the rangefinder? It's like, that's something different. So that's something the costumers are now going to have to rush out for the Boba Fett helmets and put lights on the top of the rangefinder. But this was something that people have been waiting decades to see. Fett's inside the Sarlacc. How does he get out? And of course, in the non-canon stories, he did get out. In the canon side, he didn't. But now, obviously, he does. And I thought this was actually very well done, all dark and grimy and all the rest of it. What do you reckon, old son?
Yeah, I thought it was really good too. Did you find it strange of all the other things that were in the Sarlacc, there was a stormtrooper and not Weequays and all these other things?
Yeah, that was brought up in the viewing that I had last night with a couple of people, and they said, "Why is there a stormtrooper there?" And of course, there could be an entire sub story as to how this dude ended up there. Now, whether he'd been there for a long time, long time, or whether he was part of the search party looking for the droids in A New Hope. I mean, if he fell in the Sarlacc, I mean, didn't anybody notice he was missing? So this was a little bit of a, how lucky is that? There's a stormtrooper there who's got an oxygen pipe or whatever attached to his helmet. So, and I agree with you, other body parts and other characters could have been there, but they weren't. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you reckon?
It was one of those things I thought they might have, shown maybe a yak face or something different just as a nod to the fans, because let's face it, this was loaded with Easter eggs from all different things. I think you and I, probably growing up, would have both had to imagine what was inside the Sarlacc, and I thought they did it well. I thought that was a good way to represent it. What I did find interesting was in the comics, I don't know if you've ever read it, he had one line about when he turned up after Jedi, and it was basically, he said, the Sarlacc found me somewhat indigestible. In this, he barbecues the Sarlacc from the inside, and when you see him pull out, it looks like the Sarlacc's dead.
Yeah, it kind of does make sense that would be the way out, because as fans used to say, he's got all these weapons on him, and these flamethrowers and stuff are still working. So it did make a lot of sense. Yeah. I like this from Grant. His son got excited expecting to see Dengar. Yeah, there's a whole lot going on regarding fan service. I mean, a lot of people was expecting Bosk to turn up, and of course Bosk didn't, but a Trando Shand did, which is now pronounced a Trandoshan. Who knew that? So there you go. And you are right, Gavin. Yeah, 1,000 years of digestion, anything could be in there. So that Stormtrooper could have been in there for like nearly 20 years. So there you go. So the thing I picked up on is that when he does get out of the Sarlacc, the thing about the Jabba Salbarge, which now has a name, which I didn't know that, the Katana. Go figure that. It slices the dices. What can I say? The thing about the sail barge is there's no smouldering embers. So it's clearly burnt out a long time ago. So it's not like it just Fett fell in the Sarlacc, gets out 20 minutes later, right? I mean, this is probably weeks later, days later, who knows? So he's obviously been in the Sarlacc for a while. So is that something you picked up on at all?
I did. I did wonder if it would be a flaming sort of sail barge when he got out. The other thing is if there would be anyone around trying to rescue anyone, but didn't seem to be. So, like I said, the thing I picked up on, the Sarlacc tentacles were inert and not moving. So I thought, he's killed the Sarlacc from the inside.
Actually, with that in mind, that actually brings me to this shot. So, one, it confirms, yes, Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc 18, but I agree with you. Some people have picked up that the Sarlacc looks like the 1983 original trilogy version, not the special edition version with all the other extra doodads hanging out. So that might be a bit of an FU to the old special editions, if you know what I mean. So and it works and it's good. And it would, if he's barbecued it from the inside, then he's clearly killed. And I like the fact, because some people thought he was going to climb him right up the middle. And the fact he came out the side, that kind of works. It was very dramatic and it worked really, really well. And the fact he was all covered in mess and whatever else. I thought that was kind of cool. So what do you reckon? Yeah?
Yeah, it was good. And I like the fact, the suit he's in is pretty good, but it doesn't protect him from digestive juices.
No, it doesn't. He's had a hard, yes. Totally agree. Now, now Gavin, I know, hasn't seen the episode, so he said Jawas would have a field day. Well, as it turned out, they did. So they rocked up, and this was interesting that they were prepared to take the suit off the guy while he was still alive. The only criticism I had, and I don't know if you noticed this, is that nearly all of their dialogue and all their noises were originally from A New Hope, right? Yeah. All the intiggies and all that sort of stuff. It was almost like they couldn't be bothered re-recording new material. They just used the old stuff. And I thought, that was a bit of a cop-out in my view. What do you reckon?
Well, that's one of the things I've always noticed about the Star Wars expanded universe. It's almost like they do this expanded stuff, but it actually restricts the universe because everything takes place on the same planet and everyone knows everyone, and Vader made C-3PO and all this stuff. And you're like, hang on a second, it'd be good to expand it rather than make it all incestuous. And I did notice that with the Jawas where, it was Utini and all of that all over again, which they've pretty used every appearance they make. Yeah. And
you can tell from all the inflections, it's just direct copy. They've just used the exact material. They haven't it's like Intigi could mean 1,000 different things, but it's not like they've said it different ways. It's identical. So that's how and as a fan, you just spot it straight away and you go, mate, that's so cheap. Isn't it interesting from Rico? He's asked, it's been so long, why were the Jawas only showing up? Well, it's a good question. I mean, Tatooine's a big place. So they may have been like a week away, 2 weeks. We don't really know how long it's been. But as I said, because there was no smaller embers, it gave the impression it had been a while. And maybe other Jawas, maybe other Jawas had been there. So one group have come and gone and buggered off, and then another group turn up, and that's the group that we see. So it's certainly possible. Sorry, go on.
You would have thought there'd be like two sand crawlers in the background with their cranes and everything, taking the barge apart and taking every last piece of metal.
Maybe they did. So if you had the explosion of the sail barge, the katana, right, and all the Jawas go, oh my God, did you see that? And they all roll in en masse, pick the sail barge to pieces, take it off, and then this lone dude, this crowd of we were 4 weeks away, they just rumble on in. Oh, what's left? Oh, there's a frigging dude here with a suit on. We'll swipe that. So you can certainly look at it from that perspective. And that to me works actually. So there you go. Regarding him coming out of the Sarlacc looking like a complete mess. There was a great comment here. Good old Gavin said, he's like from he slimed me, from Ghostbusters. Very, very cool. The Stormtrooper was a Starlights Christmas dinner. I love that. Very, very good. And there was a classic here, and hang on, I've got to find it. It's an absolute, Grant is on the money. A new figure, sand-covered Fett. Yeah, well, you can imagine the action figure companies are going to go completely ballistic over this, so there's a lot for them to play with, so.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, don't forget, Gavin, they're in tribes. How many sandcrawlers? There could be thousands of them around the desert. Yeah, it's a big planet, so who knows? So there you go. So that obviously then leads us to what happens afterwards. So his armor's been taken off him, and poor old Fett gets captured by the sandcrawler. And I thought the idea of the injuries that he's sustaining worked really well. One, he's not used to being in the Tatooine, the double suns, the twin suns, right? So he's always been in helmets and armor and all the rest of it. So he'd be really susceptible to the heat and the UV rays and all the rest of it. And plus, as you said, the digestive juices of the Sarlacc. So, what do you reckon? Did you sort of pick up on that as well?
Yeah, I did. I thought when he came out, it was really, really good and probably accurate to what digestive juices would be. I don't know. Again, me being me, I'm like, is that the original costume, what he had under it when he was in Jabba's palace, kind of thing? So it was just like a light suit like that. So for me, it was more, comparing the new to the original.
Now, this is something a fan picked up on, and I thought, you can't do this. You couldn't do it. It'd just be too hard. But one of the things that I've gone back a few slides. One of the things that a few people have noticed, one person noticed, they said the problem with this sequence where he comes out of the Sarlacc is that Temuera Morrison is not even remotely close in body shape to Jeremy Bulloch, right? Yeah, it may have even worked better to use someone who is slender and tall like Jeremy Bulloch in this sequence when he first gets out, and then somehow or other, once Fett sort of builds up and bulks up, he becomes the Temuera Morrison version. But of course, that doesn't work in terms of like the facial features and how do you portray that. But yeah, if you look at like Boba Fett from the original trilogy, I mean, Jerry Bullock was 6'1" and a slender guy, and Chimera Morrison is not even remotely close to being that size. So there is a bit of disproportionate sort of like look with the character, and I think that may jar with some fans too. So did you pick up on that as well? I think you didn't you?
I did. I think it's one of those things I'll talk about later as we go into some of the other things that, Boba Fett says and does in this series that I'm like, oh, I don't know if my Boba Fett would have done and said that kind of thing. I thought he was a much more cold, hard bounty hunter in the original. Now this gives him layers. Did we need the layers? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's very Chrissy's made a mention about the unmasking Vader when she saw the Boba Fett thing, and that's an interesting sort of conundrum that this show's got, because unlike in the Mandalorian, where taking the helmet off the guy was a really rare occurrence. Now they're doing it all the time, and there's a good example later on where it's like he's taking the helmet off. They're going, oh, okay, I wonder if he would actually do that. If he had left it on, would the result be different? But we'll get to that later on. I'm getting ahead of myself. I love this. Yeah, Boba's really hungry. Box of a Tatooine fried chicken. Yeah, absolutely. TFK. Yeah. So he gets picked up by the Tusken Raiders and get dragged back to his camp. And I tell you what, if you love Tusken Raiders, I mean, you're having a field day, because they're all in the Mandalorian and they're all in this show now. And for those people who don't go for them, you'll be going, bloody hell, more freaking sand people. And I do actually like the fact that it's riding in single file doesn't actually hide their numbers, because you can clearly see there's 5 of them. I thought it was a nice little gag. But the Banthas, once again, look fantastic. And yeah, we're back to the Tusken Raider camp. So I don't know what the deal is with Mandalorians and Tusken Raiders. It's just they seem to go hand in hand. Both shows did exactly the same thing. What do you reckon?
I actually really liked what they did with the Tuskens in this, because it was kind of the opposite for what you were saying with the Jawas, where they didn't just do the Tusken Raider call and they didn't just have the ones from the other movies. It looked like there was more of a hierarchy, and like different tribes have sort of different tribal gear on. And I was just thinking that'd make a nice 12-inch figure. This is going to be a box set,
Yeah, there'll be plenty of those. So Pearl Boba's having a bit of a hard day at the office, as you can see, and they're really emphasising the injuries and the wounds. And once again, he's stuck out in the sun and all the rest of it. So he would like be, because this all harks back to his the Bacta tank stuff. He's getting through the Bacta treatment, and is it to deal with this issue? And of course, he's having the dreams again and the PTSD, if you will. So clearly had a bit of a hard, as I said here, a bit of a hard day at the office. And so, but it kind of works for the character. Now, whether you like it or not, whether it works for the story and the narrative, I think it'll play out in the long run. But in the short term, it was probably a little bit, I don't know, a bit of a drag.
For me. The imagery I was seeing there, and I don't think this one was deliberate, but I think there is a lot of the deliberate imagery where they look at other movies and bring it in. It really reminded me of Conan when he was strung up on the tree and all his mouth was cracked and stuff like that. It gives the audience a way to emphasize with what the character's going through straight away.
Or they could empathise with them as opposed to emphasise with them. But
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, where's me tube, a banana boat? Exactly right. So you don't notice this on the first viewing, and I've watched this a couple of times, and I must admit the second time I did enjoy it a lot more. But the whole backstory is how he interacts with the kid. So you've got a Tusken Raider kid. Now I sort of tried to look beyond what was going on with this. And I thought, well, maybe the kid, it's his responsibility to look after the prisoners, because we've got 2 of them. And maybe this is his rite of passage based on what the elders think, to say, well, okay, you've got to look after these dudes, go and do what you got to do. And then you suddenly, I don't know, earn an extra tusk or something. So, because like, as you can see, he doesn't actually have a gaffy stick there. So I try to put a bit of a story behind the story on this one. And it kind of, I think, works if you do that. If you take it at face value, it doesn't work. But did you sort of see that at all?
I did, and I did think they're setting up stuff for either what we're going to see in later episodes where he has like a connection with this kid. I did, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I did think when they sent him out with the kid in chains, I was like, Boba Fett would be off and behind the dunes and the kid would have no chance of stopping him. So it was interesting to see what they did with the story there.
Yeah. And I'll be mentioning that in a moment too. With your action figures, the Sand People now look a little different. Well, this tribe does. And I reckon it works quite well. I mean, it was like really menacing, really elaborate, as I've written there. Obviously one for the costumers and the action figure makers. And I think it was a nice departure from what we've seen, because even in Mandalorian, they kept them very traditional, as we've seen in the original trilogy as well, and the prequels. And I thought, it was just something different. I kind of liked it. So it sort of worked for me. So did it work for you?
I thought the whole look of the production was amazing. It did go right back to the Macquarie pre-production stuff, and some of the vistas reminded me of the original artwork, and seeing that Doug Chang was the production designer was interesting because he obviously respected Macquarie's stuff as well, when you can see that in his design. So it did have a nice lineage and looked good on screen. Tatooine looked like Tatooine, you know.
Yeah. Now this is now we've got the two guys have been captured, and of course the opportunity arrives for a good old Boba Fett to escape, right? And then he has the dog, the Massive, attack him. And now I had to lighten this artificially because it was a really, really dark shot. And of course he doesn't kill the dog; he actually just knocks it out, and he's actually patting it and all the rest of it, right? And I thought, would the original Boba Fett have done that? Or would he have just gone straight out and knocked this thing off and said, "That's it, done. I'm out of town." And if there's a departure from the characters, the way we understand him to be, the ruthlessness of him, this was a really interesting sort of left field tactic, and it continued on as well. So, did you see that? Were you surprised by this? Because I thought he killed the Massive, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, he didn't.
Yeah, this is the thing where I have to say I have to reconcile what my idea of Boba Fett was with what they showed, because I never in a million years thought that Boba Fett would say the line, "No hard feelings, mate," to a dog. I was like, that's not what I expected.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'm going to bring that up because I'm doing this systematically in order to say, kind of, like, mate, you've just stolen the thunder. So, but yeah, so you didn't expect him to like knock the dog out either, and you thought he would have killed it.
I thought he'd crush the dog's skull.
And of course, the dog chases him down and knocks him over. So go figure the Massive. Go figure that. I thought the same thing as Aaron. I was expecting Boba to snap the kid's neck, but he's unaware of the scavenger wood in the desert. Probably wouldn't have made him. So, well, that's true. Probably wouldn't have. They're definitely shying away from what we thought the character would do based on the supposed history that he's got. So,
well, we don't know how far they marched him into the desert. Maybe he knows if he was marched for 2 weeks into the desert and he's only wearing a pair of long johns, there's no way he makes it back to society without any help, you know?
Yeah, totally agree with you. So Christy said the Santa from makes me think about the American First Nation peoples and customs. Well, yeah, I mean, they are an indigenous group to the planet, and they all would do things differently. They do actually have different tribes, so maybe different tribes, different customs, because there was a lot of discussion on the internet about how Boba was being treated by kids and the fact he was being mistreated and all that sort of business. But by the same token, from their perspective, I mean, he is an outsider, and he's like the equivalent of a cockroach, if you will. I don't know. But maybe that's the reason why. I mean, clearly the Tusken Raiders, they aren't aiming to communicate with whoever else besides their own tribe. So anything that's classed as an outsider is classed as a lower class citizen. That's bad English, but you know what I'm saying. So that's how I sort of took it. Some people really got in the nitty gritty of it all as to how he got treated by their children. And I thought, well, you can interpret it many different ways, but it just leads into the further part of the story. So don't delve into it too much, I would say. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I did think that as well. I thought the Tusken Raiders actually behaved how Tusken Raiders, I thought that's how their children would be taught, to basically everyone who's an outsider is not to be trusted and to be, because I kind of get what Christy was saying, how maybe they're the inhabitants of the planet and they have seen more and more people arrive on their planet and they've been forced out into the desert and stuff. So that's why you get them doing the raids on different places, and, why they're not the noble savages that the Indian were portrayed of. They're the, go in and scalp you and get rid of the invading aliens.
Yep, totally agree. So Matt's mentioned about not killing the Massive was supposed to be War's respect. I felt something he took from Django. So I didn't see that from Django. I mean, when Django had to kill the Reek, he just killed it. So one shot, boom, done. So it's not how it's sort of been interpreted. But anyway, I mean, people can see things different ways. But anyway, as it moved on, he didn't kill the kid. So I thought that was an interesting one. So, I mean, obviously, killing the Massive is different to killing the child. And in the end, it didn't work for me. He ran off and just got recaptured again. But you think at this point, the kid's thinking, and I agree with you, like even later on in the later scenes, he's thinking, mate, I've got no hope against this dude. But Boba didn't do it, and off they went. So, yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So this then, and I liked, see, one of the things about the Tusken Raiders is without dialogue, and of course you can't understand what they're saying, just some of the imagery and the body stances, you can actually tell what they're thinking just from the way the camera works and the lighting and all the rest of it. And this is when the kid's now stood up and he's seeing Boba run off, and you can tell the kid's thinking, shit, I just got out of jail free card moment there. Yes. And I like that. And there's a fair bit of that in this show when you just see the kid's reaction, and it tells you 1,000 words. And with that in mind, there's a lot of scenes where there's no dialogue at all versus, say, The Mandalorian, where poor old Din Djarin always had to explain what he was doing. Oh, do I go left? Do I go right? Do I do this? Whereas here, Boba didn't really say a lot at all for most of it. And I really liked that. I thought that was a really interesting sort of change. What do you reckon?
What I think is fantastic, a lot of people say a movie is much better when they don't tell, they show. And this is a classic example of where you knew what was going on with very little dialogue, and just by the sort of inflections and movements of the characters or a few growls or something, and you know exactly what's happening and what they're thinking, which is really masterful direction.
Yeah. Although in occasions through these sequences when Boba did speak, it was kind of stupid. What do you want me to do? Oh, you want me to dig for water? By then we've kind of figured out what's going on. But it's definitely a nice change from Mandalorian, where Din was constantly talking to himself as to what he, because we had to do it for the audience because he had his helmet on. Nobody knew what he was thinking. So that was kind of stupid. So he gets captured out in the desert by the Tuskens. And I thought this was actually a significant moment, because this demonstrated that without his weapons, Boba Fett is useless, effectively, right? He's used to having all the armor and all the flamethrowers and the darts and all this sort of crap. Take all that off, and he's useless. And I actually thought that was actually quite significant and quite symbolic. And but a lot of people wouldn't have picked up on it. But yeah, I certainly did. And I go, oh, that's interesting, because that then leads us into other things later on. Did you notice that at all?
Well, I actually thought, and I don't know if anyone who was watching thought this, he was getting beaten up and he was getting beaten down. And I thought he would take it for a little bit, and then he was going to get up and take them all out. I just thought Boba Fett would be able to do that. Then I guess I thought, do you know what? He's been in the Sarlacc for who knows how long. He's been having 1 cup of water a day for a couple of days, and he's escaped in the middle of the night, and he's probably sunburnt, half cooked, not had much sleep. So I'll give him a pass on that. But again, I was thinking, you know, he'll get hit a couple of times and then he'll go, okay, enough, and put his hand up, catch the gaffy stick, and then, you know, say, okay, you don't do that with me, kind of thing. But that didn't happen. So I was a bit surprised by that.
Yeah. So Grant, as Matty mentioned, he should have put a bit better fight, lost too easily. But yeah, I agree with your summation, right? I mean, the guy's dehydrated. He's obviously sunburnt. He's not feeling the best. And he's fighting against fully strength Tusken Raiders. And as I said, he had no weapons at all. So, but that actually was insignificant, because when you get to this sequence, this is how I've interpreted what's going on, right? Now, this is actually a bit further on in the story. So he gets beaten by this dude who's obviously their chief warrior. I've now worked on the view that because he cannot fight without his weapons, they can, and he later on he becomes part of the tribe. They then teach him how to fight with a gaffy stick, and the gaffy stick he's got in the Mandalorian, right, the end of season, whatever it was, season 1, the gaffy stick he's got up here. We worked on the assumption that he stole that, he's killed someone, and he's nicked it, and I actually believe he's earned it. And I think that'll actually happen towards the end of the series, where as part of his story, they've given him a gaffy stick because he's now one with the group. So I reckon that'll be an interesting sort of sub-story that occurs from that. So I'd be curious to see whether I'm right or not. But they obviously didn't want to kill him. They could have, and they didn't. And there's obviously got to be a reason for that. And I think this has got something to do with it. So if that's the case, then that is really forward-thinking from the producer, saying we're going to put Boba Fett in The Mandalorian with a gaffy stick, and then we'll explain in another show how he gets it, and it won't be how people assumed he got it. Because when he had it in Mandalorian, he must have killed a shitload of Tuskens for that, and maybe he didn't do that at all. So there you go. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I do think now, you know, we might even get an episode where he is dressed up in the full Tusken Raider gear, and the surprise reveal is he takes the head off. You think you're going to finally see a Tusken, and it's Boba Fett.
Yeah, I worked on the view that taking a step further, because Cobb Vanth is the character wearing the Fett armor in The Mandalorian, maybe our Fett finds out about it, and that's when he says, I'm leaving the tribe to go and get my armor back, and off to Mos Pelgo he goes. So wait and see, I guess. Now, hang on, where are we? There's a good... Rico said, not sure if he's useless. And I agree, we both agreed on it. Yeah, no food, water, and all the rest of it. But I still think unarmed, like without his weapons, he's nowhere near as lethal as he would be normally, because he's so used to having all this technology. So it's like most modern-day soldiers aren't necessarily good hand-to-hand combatants because they're used to having guns. So anyway, I could be wrong. Who knows? So that hang on. You know why he was weakened from the environment? Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with you, Matt. I'm just, So I just put it out there. I think it's a combination of all those factors. Okay, but you are right. I mean, he was definitely weakened, no doubt about that. And Gavin said, earn through honor sounds like a good story. Yeah, well, who knows? But that's how I'm interpreting it. And they've kept him alive for a reason. And as we know later on, he becomes part of the tribe. Speaking of which, so we see the attack on the house here. A lot of people thought, oh my goodness, is this the Lars homestead? Is it Ben's hut? And then other people have just said, you know what, it's a good chance that just the architecture on Tatooine is just the same everywhere because it's practical. it works for everybody. And this was a nice little bit that sort of popped up and a little bit unexpected. What do you reckon, old son?
Yeah, this was another one of those things where when I saw it and you saw the child like took them and showed them what was going on, I thought that was one of those things that, you know, explains a bit why the Tusken Raiders are so savage, because they look at these other people and they're like, well, they screw each other over, you know, we don't do that. So I just thought it was a nice bit of character building and backstory for the Tusken Raiders.
Yep. Outdoor barbecue, definitely. And I agree with you, Rico. That if there was an opportunity for Boba to escape, that was it. There's a whole thing there in the hut, and he could have got, there probably might have been some water there or some food or whatever, and he just didn't do it. And that just seemed unusual. And in fact, when I first watched the episode, I thought, oh, they've gone to the house and then they've just left. It's like, why wouldn't you go in and check it out? It's like, it made no sense to me. But yeah, I agree with you. That's probably one that like didn't exactly work.
Do you think that gang will come back into it, because they left a graffiti sign and stuff? And yep. I'm wondering what story they're going to go with, and I was wondering if it'd be like a fistful of dollars, where, you know, he goes in and cleans out the gangs and goes from lawlessness to respect kind of thing.
Yep, I definitely think they're coming back, whoever they happen to be. And the fact that they killed this dude, this farmer, I'm over here, this farmer guy and all that, and yeah, he's going to be pretty shitty when he finds out who these people are. So that's a no-brainer. And you got to remember, this is the post-Return of the Jedi thing. The Empire's gone, the New Republic is in town, and it's just like the place is lawlessness. There's no huts anymore, so the place is all over the place. So that's bad English. It's everything's all over the place. So that's how I sort of saw it. And interesting.
Just imagine how many fans would have freaked out. Instead of that graffiti, they'd put up like Black Sun logos or something like that.
Yeah, you could easily just Photoshop in some brand new logos like Crimson Dawn and all the rest of it, and have a whale of a time. And people go, "Oh my god, how good a fan service! We've got to love that." So there you go. The waste of water, what got me, they could have collected all that water on Tatooine, which is so valuable. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. It's very funny. There's a lot of it's very Dune-like in this show, because water's popping up and people want to moisture farmers and all the rest of it. But maybe it's not as bad as, say, what Dune is. But I agree with you. The wastage of water does seem a bit unusual. So, yes, exactly right.
I think water is one of the big commodities on Tatooine. Maybe the guys on the bike stole it all.
Yeah, and they left the fountain running. Yeah, it's unusual. I'm not too sure how you can explain that. So anyway, the kid's back in charge of the prisoners, and I love the fact, actually, the Massive, because obviously a CG character, they did a really good job. They put the footprints in and all the rest of it, so it looked really, really good. The Rhodian dude, well, he was just a waste of space. But anyway, the idea is the kid's in charge of the prisoners, and they've got to start digging. And this is what you said earlier, and I was surprised when he said to the Massive, "No hard feelings, mate." I thought, that's a really left field line for an American show. I mean, as I said there, does it appear in Galactic Basic, mate? Oh, maybe Tamara just sort of ad-libbed that and chucked it in himself, because obviously he's a New Zealander. So what do you reckon?
I did think that. I was wondering if that might have been ad-libbed, because it doesn't really fit with anything else we've seen in Star Wars before. That one was where I was like, okay, this is going to be very different characterization of Boba Fett from what I thought it was going to be.
So what you need to do now is go back and look at the original version of The Empire Strikes Back, put Captain Solo in the cargo hold, mate. That's fingernails on the blackboard jarring, that is. Yeah. So, yes, I like this. Yes, Jango Fett is originally from Space Australia. Totally agree with it. So, and once again, he overpowers the kid, right? Because he's now, who knew that there was water on the ground in those shells? I was like, oh, is that how you get your water? I thought, mate, you'd have to 10,000 of them just get a pot of soup. So that was a bit left field. But yeah, once again, the kid's got no hope. So you do wonder why Fett is playing along with this, because he could easily overpower the dog, overpower the kid. As you said, he had an opportunity earlier when they went to the hut. I don't know. What do you reckon?
I don't know. Obviously, there's something deeper going on. I do think because he didn't beat the kid earlier, he has maybe there may be, putting a connection between the two. I do think, it's going to be they have some kind of bond, but I guess that will develop as we watch the rest of the show.
Yeah, and once again, it's down to the water, so they suck the water. I mean, I don't know what the deal was. Is he supposed to dig up these shells and then give them to the kid who brings them back to the tribe, or is the kid just going to drink them all? Or just give them to the Massive? And if there was a weak part of the show, this is probably bad, because it was kind of dragging a little bit. You could think, there may be ways of streamlining this, just making it move a little quicker. And I think if there's criticisms for the show, it's probably some of this stuff, but there'll probably be payback later. But being the first episode and the one episode that everybody's going to watch, if it just doesn't work for them, they'll just tune out altogether. So it really has to hit the nail on the head from the first time around and suck people in and go, oh, that is awesome. I loved it. And for this, there were some slow moments. I don't want to say dry moments because there's a bit of water there. But that I think was sort of cool. Sort of one of them. It was just tad pointless. We all know he can escape and overpower the kid and the dog. Why doesn't he do it?
Well, it suddenly looks to me there was a lot more ways of finding water on Tatooine than we originally thought. I always thought the Tusken Raider masks were a bit like the Dune steel suits, where they had these valves and stuff around them because they would collect any condensation or anything because it was such a harsh environment. So now you can go and dig these the shells out of the desert, or maybe they're eggs. I don't know. Whatever they are.
I think they're just shells. But it's kind of funny. You're thinking, okay, how did they get there in the first place? But that's another story for another time. All right. So then later on, the Rodian guy comes across the big monster, and whatever this thing happens to be, it's like straight into Ray Harryhausen territory. Absolute no-brainer. Everybody's picked up on it. And for those who love Ray Harryhausen effects, thought, oh, great, it's a tribute to him. And those who don't care about Harryhausen stuff and looked at this and they go, that was a friggin' stupid one. That was stupid.
This was such a good effect. I couldn't tell what scenes in it were CGI and what were costume.
Yeah.
And that's like, obviously some were CGI, but there were some I was like, what is this? This is really good. It was filmed like a Harryhausen effect would be filmed as well, just in the way they framed stuff up, which I thought was really fantastic. Also, we were debating, I don't think it is, but was it a claw slug that is on the Jederic board? When they're playing the games, there is a slug that it's sort of got two sets of arms and it's up on its back, and it kind of almost looks like the monster here. And also what we were saying, my wife, if she watched it with me, they were like, she said, are they digging up its eggs and drinking them? That's why it's mad at them. So
I don't know. I do know from some of the comments that I read, some people were not dialed into it at all. They said, I don't like it. I don't understand it. It pet out of nowhere. It's really anti-Star Wars in its design. And I thought you can make of it what you will. I don't think the thing's even got a name yet. So
I think it's probably how old you are, because I loved it because it reminded me of a 70s Harryhausen. I like that more than the Raftars in the new stuff, which are just big CGI squids. To me, I thought this was much more in keeping with the stop motion animation that George Lucas would have done originally. But I can understand that dates it as well, and some of the audience would go, well, that looks a bit crap.
Yeah. I mean, it allowed an opportunity for Fett to really show he could have beaten the kid anytime, could have beaten the Massive anytime. Then all of a sudden he strangles this thing, right? The big superhero shot in the sunset in the background. We look at the kid, right? The kid, once again, without any dialogue, you can just see, mate, he's going, oh my God, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then he's crapping himself, realizing, shit, Fett could kill me whenever he wanted to. So, I mean, there was a means to an end, and that was it. Okay. So you're obviously going to become part of the tribe after this and all the rest of it. But you do wonder, it is, some would argue, potentially sloppy storytelling, but it worked for the gag. And if you see it as one big piece, then it kind of does make a lot of sense. But you do wonder, what was Fett thinking the whole way along? How lucky it was that there was a monster in the ground that killed the Rodian, but I was able to kill it, and now I'm suddenly the coolest kid in town, as it were, as opposed to the kid in the Tusken Raider group. So, yeah, what do you reckon?
And you do realize that kid has so much kudos back at the tribe, because I'm sure the story he killed it turned into we killed it when he's showing the head to everyone. Did you think it was interesting that Boba Fett let the kid run in with the head? He wasn't carrying it himself. He let the kid go in and show everyone, kind of thing, and was just the silent. He didn't say a word. He was sort of in the background just watching the dynamics of the tribe.
Well, that was part of the gag, because clearly the elder, maybe the father, I don't know, he put two and two together and realised, the kid didn't do it. Bringing Fett did. And the fact he let Fett walk in without the chains and stuff on, it was a bit of a no-brainer. So anyway, as it says, we're now part of the tribe. And that then links back to what I said earlier about the fact that Fett may stay with the tribe, learn how to use a gaffy stick, get his own stick, and then wander off. And, of course, that just harks back to that whole thing about how is it that with Mandalorians, Din Djarin, Boba Fett, hanging out with Tusken Raiders, he'll probably get to speak the language the whole bit. And I don't know, it's funny, in two different shows, two different characters meeting the same race of aliens, if you will, and to see how their respective stories go. So if you, as I said earlier, if you weren't a fan of Tusken Raiders, you'd be like, God, not again. So anyway, what the hell? What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, it's like it shows how dangerous Tatooine is, because you could just be walking around and you step on a monster that's buried. I did wonder, they've done a few times in the Force Awakens and that, where stuff comes out of the sand. It's kind of one of those things that happens a lot in
it's the tremors moment. So yeah, I mean, you got a monster under the sand. It's like, yeah, okay, that's something a little bit left field. You don't expect to see that, but you are right, Grant. Yeah, good old Luke was sent to a dangerous place, but I mean, people obviously survived there. I mean, who knows? These things might be territorial, only hang out in the deep desert. I mean, it was mentioned even in the novelization that sand people very rarely ever attacked homesteads. So as long as you didn't go wandering out on your own like Shmi did, you might be okay. So, and Jawas wouldn't go near anyone really. So, people just get by. I mean, some people say that New York is a more dangerous place. So,
it just shows you what's there. And they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then obviously the top of the food chain is the Great Dragon.
Yeah. And obviously there wouldn't be too many of those floating around. So that, once again, they're probably in the deep desert. And anyway. Yeah. So there'd be quiet parts of town. And obviously where Luke was probably one of them. So very, very cool. So that was all the flashback stuff, which was interesting. So for all, Fett's gotten out of the Sarlacc. He's had his armor taken by the Jawas. He meets up with the Tuskens. He's finally become part of the tribe. Let's see what happens there. And for those who really aren't into flashbacks, it looks like there's a long story to be told. And this is only just the start of it. So in the next episodes, it'll probably continue on from there, how he becomes, as I said earlier, how he sort of becomes part of what the group and learn more about their culture. As to why that's important is anybody's guess. But or whether they'll just go, all right, maybe 10 minutes worth. Okay, a montage. Got to have a montage. And, he's hanging out when he's drinking the thing and he's using the stick, and then suddenly he's gone. And then we just get past all that. I don't know. We have to wait and see. So there you go. Very, very cool. All right, so that brings us into the present. So in the present, Paul Fett's having back to treatment. And that could be obviously due to the injuries he sustained while he's with the Tusken Raiders. So this is now in present time. This is after the Mandalorian series. And whether it's to do with the PTSD, who knows? But he seems to be having this stuff on a regular basis. And, of course, we don't know if he was having back to treatment during the Mandalorian sequences as well, because we didn't see that. So what do you reckon?
Well, I actually thought it was a very clever way of storytelling, because what they've done, they bookended the series at the beginning and the end with the flashbacks, and in the middle you get the main story. And what they've done by doing this, they can give you the backstory at the same time as you watch the news story. So rather than doing it through character exposition, like going into a cantina and they say, well, Boba Fett blasted his way out of the Sarlacc, they actually show it to the audience as they're watching it. The thing you've got to be really careful of, because we've had a couple of people mention, Christy said it was boring, you've got to balance that really well. So you're not going, get on with it, get on to the new part of the story. I was happy with it because I guess I liked looking at the backstory and seeing the things I've imagined about Boba Fett for years and years and years finally on the screen. How it holds up on rewatch a couple of times, that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think getting out of the Sarlacc thing, you're right. Got to show that, right? You have to show that. They've shown it as great. The Tusken Raider thing, as I said, will that work? Yes or no? Will people start going, like Christy said earlier, start yawning away through it? So come on, just get on with the main story, okay? We don't really give a shit about looking for water and digging sand and all sort of crack and pattern massive. So anyway, we had to balance that with the present. Now, I thought this was kind of funny, right? And I thought, okay, we finally get to see Fett put the costume on or the outfit, the armor on. And I thought, if you're a costumer out there who's got Boba Fett, so this is how you put it on, kids, in case you don't know. So if you want to be screen accurate, it's got to be just like this. And I thought it was interesting because it got a fresh new paint job in Mandalorian, and now it's already got scratches on it. So whoever paints these things doesn't do a very good job, do they? What do you reckon?
You didn't see it very well, but when it was sitting on its stand in the background, it was very similar again to when it was in Voss's. You saw a Mandalorian on a stand, a Mandalorian armor in the Han Solo movie. So I thought that was interesting. I did think this is the updated version of Boba Fett's outfit and armor. It's not the one I kind of remember and know the most. So it was interesting they did that. Do you know what it was for, though? It was for some great trailers where they could show the armor being put on, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Batman thing where it's like and all this sort of bizarre.
Oh, no,
it would be this. It would be
the armor.
Hey?
Nipples on the armor.
Nipples on the armor, exactly right. So yeah, no, it would be the original armor from way back when. So he wouldn't have upgraded, wouldn't have changed it because we went to hell and back down Sarlacc and onto Cobb Vanth and into Jabba's hands, and it's all done the rounds. And he got it back, gave it a fresh new paint job, and he's got scratches on it already. So obviously the undercoat didn't work. So he got to go Torben. What can I say? So yeah, he puts his helmet on. All right, yep, very, very cool. By this point, who gives a shit about the fact he wears a helmet? Because we know exactly what he looks like, but whatever, it works well. And he's still got the dent in the helmet. He's ready for business. Day one, okay, of being a crime lord. This was an interesting contrast from what we've seen in Return of the Jedi, where the whole place was just chock full of aliens. Now it's empty. No one's there, right? And I thought that was actually kind of groovy in a lot of ways. And you got the sunlight streaming through the top and all the rest of it. And I think in time you do wonder how long before he ends up with followers and friends, and as I said, they're hangers on, and before you know it, the place is like a massive party place. So, what do you reckon?
Well, again, it was interesting, and we saw at the end of Mandalorian where he goes in and takes over. Being a crime boss is not as exciting as I thought it would be, though. And he didn't seem to come across as super knowledgeable about what he was going to do or what was going to be happening. So that was a bit of a curveball for me as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So he takes over and he's doing the tributes from the people, and he's got no friggin' idea what the hell he's doing. So there is a question as to saying, why is he a crime boss in the first place? What's the motivation? That's the thing has not been touched on at all. So he's come in, knocked off Bib Fortuna, taken over the Enterprise and so beauty, not the Starship Enterprise, but the business enterprise. And it's like, okay, is that part of your long-term plan of when you're a bounty hunter? Say, yes, I want to be a crime boss like all these other dudes. So that's the motivation really hasn't been covered off. But, let's put that aside for one moment. So it's his first day on the job. He's doing the tributes and he's got no idea what he's up to. And I think that kind of works actually to a large degree. So because he's a complete outsider and he's just like making it up as he goes along. With that in mind, we haven't discussed Fennec Shand. And obviously she's like he's Major Domo, or he's right-hand person, if you will. But she actually really didn't have much to do in this episode at all. From a character development point of view, she just played the bad cop. Every time he came up with an idea, she'd come up with an opposing idea. And that was about as far as it went. So you kind of hope that it's somewhere down the track that they'll certainly do more with her, because I thought if there was a disappointing character in this, it was definitely her, because all the focus was on him. Did you say that at all?
Interestingly, I had thought Fennec Shand was grossly underrepresented in this episode. I did find it interesting, though, that he seems to be, setting stuff up, but she's the one in the background who is almost like, I imagine, Boba Fett, doesn't say very much, but knows what to do and enacts it, kind of thing. So it was interesting to see what they're going to do with that character, especially as we've seen more of her now in, the Bad Batch and things like that. I did think she would be more front and center than she was in this episode.
Totally agree, which is why I still think that there's a potential, if they do it properly, she'll become the breakout character. And if they play it well, could end up becoming more popular than Fett, because Fett has this really long story. We've seen him through the prequels, we've seen him through the original trilogy, whereas Fennec is still relatively new. And if they do it properly and don't just leave her out on the outer, she could end up being like a real fan favorite, a bit like Ahsoka was in the Clone Wars animated series. Started off as everybody hated her, and then all of a sudden she's like the most popular thing ever. So you'd like to think that that's going to happen, but as of this episode, as we both agree on, she kind of got a bit hard done by. But wait and see. This was an interesting moment. So this is this dude who's represented this Twi'lek. I always thought it was pronounced Twi'lek, but they prefer Twi'lek. But whatever.
They've changed a lot of the commonly accepted pronunciations, I think. Do you know what, though? I think that's probably fine, because, I'll say a word one way and other people in another country will say a word another way. Yep. So it's just the whole mixture of different races, I think, say things different ways.
Yep. So this dude turns up, and he's obviously the major domo to the mayor, and we don't know who the mayor is. Someone has suggested it could be the Ithorian we saw in the trailer. We'll cross that bridge. We know it's a he, because he makes this guy makes reference to the mayor being a he. So some people thought, it might be Kira from Crimson Dawn from Solo, but obviously it can't be her because it's a bloke. And I just thought it was interesting that this guy is the major domo of the mayor, just like Bib Fortuna was the major domo of Jabba, and they're both Twi'leks. I say Twi'lek. I'm just going to stick with that. So I thought that was kind of cool. But this was actually quite interesting, because Fett's taken over the crime syndicate, and no one knows who he is. And clearly the mayor is not quaking in his stylish yet affordable boots at this point in time. And I thought that was quite good. And there's a really good way of describing and saying, well, I'm now the crime boss, but no one respects me. No one gives a shit about who I am. And in fact, if anything, this dude wanted Boba Fett to pay him money. So So that was an interesting sort of moment with these characters. And I don't know who that guy is because he hasn't been named, but I certainly hope that we see more of him. What do you think of all that?
I did think when they were talking about they haven't brought a tribute, should we kill him and all of that, I thought she was going to go to kill him and Boba Fett was going to put his hand up and go no disintegrations or something like that. I did think, they haven't got the administration of this whole crime boss thing properly worked out yet. So I hope they iron that out pretty quick because I actually thought that was a bit frustrating. He wasn't coming across as the most feared bounty hunter, respected by all in the whole, galaxy to me in this episode.
Yeah, and I actually think it kind of worked at that point because he hasn't earned the right yet. Nobody knows who he is. He's just this random dude who's just popped up, and he's got to earn his place in the scheme of things, and that hopefully will come in time. Now, there's a comment here. There's been sitting here for ages now. Grant said 2 Gamorrean guards, right? That's the start of his crowd. Now, TV budgets being what they are, these guys look shit house. It's like, really? I mean, they look nothing like Jabba's Gamorrean guards from the 83 movie. So a movie from nearly 40 years ago, that's what a Gamorrean guard on the right should look like. So just getting some overweight dudes, paint them green and stick a couple of Gamorrean heads on them.
On the plus side, suddenly there's a cosplay I can do quite accurately.
So, yeah, and I thought as soon as they said, these Gamorreans work for Jabba, and I looked at the picture, I was like, no, they've obviously, they haven't had enough Tatooine fried chicken. So, they may have added prosthetics on the legs, maybe potentially up here, but that's just not even cutting close. And look at the hands. If you look at it, like the Gamorrean guards' hands, they're clearly not human hands, whereas these guys, they've lost a couple of fingers in their travel. So,
do you remember in the Mandalorian though, they did have some wrestling with Gamorrean guards, and they looked more like this version, and they kind of got that criticism, and I think they came back and said, well, the ones for Jabba were fat and lazy and well fed that had been sitting in this palace, just eating bantha ribs, and these ones are the more athletic, proper trained to kill ones. But I agree with you, the ones from Return of the Jedi, the Gamorrean guards, I think look fantastic.
Yeah. So the Mandalorian ones you can get away with because you're right, they were in a wrestling match, but these two dudes, no. Although Rico, and I agree with you, yeah, Bib Fortuna was a bit of a fat dude, so he was eating all their chow. So, but still, I mean, for a great show, and especially when they're harking back to these characters have been around for a while. Don't forget, there's only a few years after Jedi. Even though the film Return of the Jedi was nearly 40 years ago, they wouldn't have changed that much. So that was a bit of a letdown. So what the hell? So did they mention they've been mistreated too? No, they just said that they were they served both Bib and Jabba and left at that. So there you go. So then we look at Mos Espa. Now, it's come a long way since the Phantom Menace. A big crater in the ground with a whole lot of stuff in it. As someone said, it's called Mos Angeles. I actually think that's a grouse name for it. And I thought it was interesting because there was a massive contrast to, say, Mos Eisley, which you saw in The Mandalorian. And Mos Eisley is like a bit of a ghost town now. And some people worked on the view that because the Empire had left town and Jabba was killed, that the business had all died off. But get on Mos Espa, mate, that's a happening place. What do you think?
Well, this is what I was saying about how it changes the perception of what I thought. There's that quote from Star Wars, if there's a bright center of the universe, you're on the planet that it's farthest from, which I always thought there was nothing there. It was a backwater. It was a bit of a shithole and nothing ever went on. You had some local politics. Now it looks like the center of the universe with this huge big city and all the galactic crime bosses are there. I mean, even in episode 1, no one's heard of Tatooine and they don't take Republic credits and stuff like this. There's a bit of revisionism, I think, where the importance of Tatooine in the universe has definitely gone up a couple of notches.
Yeah, definitely. So good on Mos Espa. That's done really well for itself. I couldn't help but notice this, right? So this is the scene in Mos Espa. The dogs, these mechanical dogs, we saw those in War of the Worlds. So if you've watched the latest War of the Worlds TV series, they appear in that.
No, they are real robots. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So somebody thought, oh, Jesus Christ, what the hell did you stick those in there for? But anyway, I couldn't help myself. It was a bit of a gag. But as always, in this series, the world building is great. So Mos Espa looked really, really good from all angles, even in background shots and all the rest of it. They did a really, really good job. And it was really good to see it. So from that regards, there's certainly no complaints. And then, of course, you got the reverse shot. We've got the Sanctuary Cantina. And they do serve droids there. By the looks of it, there are droids inside. Mos Espa, as you said, is a bit of a happening place. What can I say?
So is Mos Espa more of a hive of scum and villainy than Mos Eisley now? Has it outgrown Mos Eisley?
Who knows? Well, definitely would have outgrown it by the looks of it. So there you go. I like this one. Rule number one, they don't talk about Tatooine. Yep, totally agree with that. The shining star of Scum and Villainy. Absolutely right. So we get into the Sanctuary Bar, right? And the first thing that pops up is Max Rebo. And, of course, first thing is it Max Rebo? And the answer is yes. So he also escaped off the sail barge, the Katana or whatever the hell that was called. So Bib Fortuna gets off. Max Rebo gets off. Who else got off? It's like freaking hell. Was a whole massive exodus while the ship was being attacked by Luke and Han and all those guys in Return of the Jedi. So that is something that needs to be filled in the gaps. I mean, it's nice to leave it empty and have fans work out their own stories. But for this, I think, okay, we need to know when they bolted and how they got off and who else got off with them. What do you reckon?
Well, who would have thought that was Max Rebo that broke the band up and started his own other band and dropped Cy Strudels and Droopy McCall? But obviously, I guess when they did the special edition and added the Yuzum, he was like, well, that's enough. I'm not going to be in that band anymore. Yeah. What I did think was really nice was they were playing the Cantina band music, but rather than the Dixieland style from the Star Wars, they were playing a sort of mariachi guitar version of it. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice the tune, but I did notice the back. In fact, like the Biff guy was like Jimi Hendrix, you know. And as I said, he looks cooler in sunglasses, but you wouldn't know he was wearing them because of his black eyes. But yeah, but no, I didn't notice the tune. No. So Rico has said he was in the books. He was never on the barge, but in the film he was, and they're actually playing music on the sail barge. Everybody was on the barge, right? Bib Fortuna, they're all on screen, and you could probably work out a bit of a time thing to say, okay, the last time you saw them on screen to the point where the ship blows up, how much time has passed? So you work on the logic that the moment Luke gets the saber and he's like swinging around, these dudes have all said, Mac, we're out of town. And you can't imagine out of everybody that Max has enough like gumption to get off his piano and bugger off out to a ship somewhere. So
it'll take the Book of Boba Fett visual dictionary for them to retcon it where little blue elephants spontaneously transport to somewhere else whenever there's danger or something like that.
Yep, totally agree. And I thought, and of course, for those who would know or wouldn't know, so the actual puppet that they use in this show would have to be a brand new one because the original one would have deteriorated 40 years ago. So they've obviously rebuilt Max Rebo. So it was cute, but stupid at the same time. So anyway, so obviously two people got off now, Bib and Max. So there you go. So still sticking with the Sanctuary Bar, the first thing I picked up on, this is a Dune moment. They've got pot plants. So it's not your average Chalmun's Cantina, which is what the Cantina was called in Star Wars. They've got pot plants in here. So clearly this is a bit more of an upper class kind of joint. You can have plants on a planet that's full of desert. What do you reckon?
Well, not only were you saying that they accept droids in here, one of the droids was in the band as well. Which I thought
yes, he's a drummer. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so
it's pretty interesting.
Who knew the droid? I suppose you just program them and they will play perfect music. So, so now this I laughed when I saw this, right? And I'm going to swear. Okay, prepare everybody. I'm going to use some foul language on this show, right? I saw that and I thought that reminds me of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Dubbo!
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Again, what I thought was interesting, if you look at the droid there, it's definitely more sort of episode 2 Coruscant sort of droid than they really are mixing all the episodes together, like you said. It's sort of a more holistic.
Well, I'm going to cut you off there because not only are the people all wearing clearly non-Tatooine type clothing, but the droid is from Star Tours. So
that dude.
Yeah, that dude. Yeah. So how about that? So, and I didn't pick up on that. Someone else picked up on it, and they said, I mean, they've obviously remodeled him a little bit, but it's the Star Tours droid. So for those who don't know, that's Star Tours is the ride at Disney, and it's been around since 1986. So there you go. How's that for a nice little gag?
Well, if Star Tours is canon, that means Earth exists in the Star Wars universe now.
Oh, no, I don't want to get into that discussion. So yeah, Star Tours isn't canon. The robot's canon. So there you go. Anyway, so from Flashdance to Sanctuary Cantina, Jennifer Beals. Now, there's a game, the name I can't pronounce, Gaza Fwip. Couldn't just give her a simple name like Gaza Flip or Gaza Fip, but Fwip.
Well, they couldn't use Gaza Strip because that would be too rude.
I love that. Very, very good. Yes, I like that. Trying to get some self-sealing stem bolts. Absolutely love it. But it's good to see Jennifer in the show, and so I reckon she's going to play a bit more of an interesting character as time goes on. This is what I was going to discuss earlier. Now, in the show, Fett's his helmet's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, right? And he walks in. They walk into the sanctuary, and he takes his helmet off. Now, had this been like the Mandalorian with Din Djarin, they would have kept the helmet on, and you do wonder how the scene would have played out if Fett had kept the helmet on, because then nobody knows what he looks like, theoretically.
Yeah.
And they go, well, okay, I'm the new crime boss in town, as opposed to seeing this bald-headed New Zealand guy. Maybe the threat would have been more pronounced. Did you pick up on that at all?
I did, and like looking at everything, you mentioned it earlier, it was almost the reverse of the Mandalorian, where the Mandalorian, he probably could have done with a couple more scenes without his helmet on if they were going to do it and get some more expression, and they kept it on most of the time. In this one, I actually would have preferred him to have his helmet on a lot more. Now, I don't know if they said to him, you're going to come back and you don't have to have the helmet on all the time, or something like that, and it's a production reason for it. Or maybe it's just super hot on Tatooine, so that's why you have the helmet off. But I don't know. I did think it was interesting in their conversation, and a couple of times they sort of said, oh, why aren't you being carried in? Like a crime boss would be, exalted and being carried in and stuff. And he's just like, I just walk in by myself and I walk out by myself. So there's a preconception there that I didn't think would happen on Tatooine. I thought Tatooine was like an old Western outpost where the toughest people ride in on their horses and shoot everyone out, where now it's more Jabba the Hutt, where everyone's on floating platforms and more like, I guess, Arabian Nights kind of society.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting point. The whole, I want to rule with respect and all this sort of thing. That, as you said earlier, is that how the character would have pronounced himself? Is that, where's that come from? And but that's the direction they're going with it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And in the end, if you rule with respect to suddenly you're going to walk into the town, everybody's going to be bowing down and throwing flowers at your feet and all this sort of business. So I don't know, but I thought it was interesting. They came and took the helmets off. They thought, hang on, you walk through the town with the helmet on, you walk into the bar and you take the helmet off, and you go, well, that's kind of stupid. Why don't you just leave it off in the first place? So anyway, so there you go. Very, very good. Hang on, he was just what? He was just trying to make his way in the galaxy. Yeah, exactly right. I like this from Christy regarding the droid. I hope he's a better was a bartender than a pilot. Yeah, exactly right. Very good. Now, Grant has said he was using his helmet as a wallet, which of course brings us to this bit. Now, what I liked about this is two things. One, you actually get to see Republic credits currency up close and personal, and you actually get to see inside the helmet. So if you're a costuming dude, you'd be going, oh, I'm going to make my Boba Fett helmet, put this brown crap all around the outside of it, because that's what the real one looks like. How good's that?
Yeah, that was interesting. And I did think it was interesting that, they didn't know the code of like, we'll clean your helmet for you, we're going to pay you off, and then we'll come back with all the tribute that we're going to give you for the protection or whatever as well.
Yeah, exactly right. And for those who don't understand Aurebesh, the 7 symbol there is not a 7. It actually refers to dollars. That's the dollar symbol in our currency, okay? And those dots there would probably represent the number, but because the numbers are different. But this is New Republic credits. So it's kind of funny because when the Galactic Empire was in control, they removed the old Republic credits, changed it to Imperial credits, and the moment the Empire fell, the New Republic said, no, we're going to change all the currency back again. Now, of course, you're talking about maybe hundreds of thousands or hundreds of planets at least. That's a lot of physical money to change in a very short period of time. So I was surprised that it was all New Republic credits. So,
well, the Republic credits as well can't be made out of nickel or metal. They must be some lightweight alloy, because if you've had a money box and you fill a helmet up with that much, you try lifting that thing.
Yeah, it does show though that even in the Star Wars universe, they're not going the way of cashless society. They're still using physical coins. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So based on our society, they wouldn't even give them. They'd give them like a card, with all the credits written on it. But now they're actually giving him physical coins. So it goes to show that in their society, they're still a bit backwards. So go, yeah.
Hell no. How can you sell illegal Twi'leks on the slave market if you can't use cash?
Yeah, exactly right. So, but it is interesting. And a lot of people will be thinking, oh my God, that's grouse. What's he got? Money. What does money look like? I thought it was in a bank somewhere and it's just on a screen. But no, in the Star Wars universe, cold hard currency is the way to go, which is very, very cool. Very good. Rewards card from Woolies. Yeah, exactly right. So we finally get into an action scene, right? And we get, these dudes. And of course, where they come from, and I worked on the view, they were sent from the mayor because the Major Domo did say that the mayor would be revisiting them again, right? So these dudes just pop up out of nowhere. And there's a bit of an action scene and yada, 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 yada. Make of it what you will, but I thought the interesting part, one, the fact that good old Boba really does crack the shits in this. And once again, the background stuff looks fantastic and it's great. And they've really thought it all through. Yeah. Oh, shit, sorry, I went too far. But what I thought was interesting is clearly the weapons are not designed to kill them, all right? They're just because they're stun weapons. So they're shock weapons, if you will, because he's getting it really hard on you. Yeah. And it's like he's not dying. So clearly their intention is not to kill them, as in kill Fett and Shand. And because otherwise a simple blaster or thermal detonator could have done the trick. So did you pick up on that at all?
I did. I think it was interesting because I've just been watching another series, Big Sky, and one of the kidnappers on that just has one of those, zappers we have, and you zap someone on the neck and down they go. Yeah, in the Star Wars universe, at one point they have two of him, two guys full on electrifying him, and he's so tough he just stands there and takes it and gets back up again. They need one of the security things from Earth. Sorry, they just need one of those security zappers from Earth,
So the poor old assassins, whoever sent them, we'll assume it's the mayor, said, go and just harass these guys. Don't kill them, just whiz them up a bit. But unbeknownst to them, the assassins are all going to get their ass kicked from here to Christmas. And that leads us to this bit here. Yeah, that's going to leave a mark when he blows the shit out of one of them. So, yeah.
Now, that was probably the closest to how I thought Boba Fett would behave. Someone comes after him, no messing about, just blow him to bits,
Yeah, totally agree. And there perhaps needed to be more of it. And I agree with Christy. Yeah, it was a bit more of a time filler than everything. And people who love their action and fight scenes, it really wasn't one of the best. So it was just sort of there and, what the hell. So very, very good. That actually is the end of all my images. So that actually brings us right to the end of the conversation. Michael said the emblem of Boba's right shoulder appears and disappears. That could be if they're flipping the shots. That sometimes does happen. And he's only got the logo on one side, so there you go. And his suit of armor, we've been negating a lot of the stun damage. Yeah, I think you'll find though he's getting in between the armor parts. They're not just going, oh, there's the armor part. We'll just go straight into that. They're actually getting him on the side. So, but either way, it wasn't enough to get him out. And of course, the Gamorreans come in and save the day and yada yada yada. So. Very good. Well, I love this one from Colin. Yes, the Jawas who took Boba Fett's costumes work for Aaron's Collectibles. Yes, there you go. Yeah, sometimes you get me in the store and in the background you'll hear in jiggies. So your final thoughts on the episode, A Stranger in a Strange Land, which I actually got to say I thought was a really good title. So what do you reckon, old son?
I thought it was good. I thought the parkour action was good with Fennec Shand. Like she got to shine a bit there. You can't imagine Boba Fett chasing them up the walls like she did, can you? So that was pretty good to see. I did think, the end of The Mandalorian had the sting in its tail of revealing Grogu. And I don't know if this had the same hook as The Mandalorian for a general audience. It is just going on the name of Boba Fett, which has a lot of good currency with fandom.
Yeah, Republic credits, in fact. You've echoed my words that I was going to say. That's what made Mandalorian work, and it brought in all these outside people. Grogu was the hook, and this show clearly doesn't have that. But by the same token, Mandalorian was very much a video game quest. Every episode, he's got to go here, he's got to go there, got to do this. This seems like more of an arc story, so it could work a little different. But it has a positive going for it, and it's the fact that it's dealing with a very, very popular character. It has a negative going against it because people who don't give a rat's ass about Boba Fett won't watch it. And even after the pilot this first episode, they may go, yeah, it's good, but it's not working for me, so they'll just tune out. And, of course, once the thing finishes in, 6-7 episodes, people move on. And, of course, there will always be comparisons between this and the Mandalorian series as well. And that's the one thing that you really don't want. You don't want a first-time character to be compared against this stalwart who's been around for like 30, 40 years. So it has the potential to really lose its way or lose an audience. You'll have devoted fans who think it's the greatest thing in the universe. But for a lot of people who go, you know what? I don't give a shit about Tusken Raiders and, Tamira Morrison's not working me as fat. Give me back Jeremy Bullock any day of the week, and they'll just filter out of it. So it's definitely a risk. But I agree with you. No Grogu. Yeah, there's your outside audience out the window. So totally agree with you on that one.
Overall, I liked it because it appealed to a lot of the nostalgia that I wanted to see. The one thing I'd probably be disappointed is we're at the end of the first episode, and I really don't know the through story of what's going to happen. They didn't set anything up enough like, okay, he's assembling a team to take out something, or he's doing this or doing that. He seems to just be, doing stuff as he goes along and there isn't a bigger story that has happened yet that it sort of fits into. So I really hope the story kicks into high gear next episode.
Yeah, and there was no introduction of an adversary either, which, as someone had said, they expected that last assassin to run back to somebody and go, oh, he beat me, and then you see the reveal or the shadowy figure of some dude, and you go, oh, that's great. Oh, I've just had the carrot's been dangled, but that wasn't the case. Oh, my goodness,
it's Darth Maul or something like that.
Yeah, exactly right. So for myself, the first time I watched it, which was last night, it really didn't push my buttons. I watched it again today. I had headphones on. I really listened to what was going on, and I dialed into it a lot more. Now, I still don't think it's great, but it's certainly a lot better than I thought it was from yesterday, if that makes sense. As to whether it's a better first episode than Mandalorian, it's anybody's guess, but I'm intrigued to see where it's going, and I did like it the second time around. So I think for a lot of people who watched it once and said, no, it doesn't work for me, maybe they may, if they're prepared to do it, give it another go. It's different to what we expected it to be. And it's going to take a little while to get used to the fact, okay, this is a new setting, new characters, and what it's all got to do. But it's got to do it, whatever it's got to do, it's got to do it quickly. It can't just dawdle and it takes time. So I honestly hope the Tusken Raider thing gets out of the way quickly. Done, give him his gaffy stick, he pisses off, get back to the present story, and then see where it goes from there. But at the moment, it's still got a couple of mountains to climb. But overall, it was a good start. So there you go. I like this one. Boba needs a catchphrase. He's no good till he did. I love that. Very, very, very good. Good stuff. He does. Yes, very, very good. And I agree that it will take a while to get used to the fact that Boba now has the Tamira Morrison characterization going through all the time, if that makes sense. So, what do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I guess I've said this before. There is now more of this new version of Boba Fett than there is of the original, even after the Mandalorian appearances there were. So this is the version of Boba Fett that we've got, for better or for worse. And I'm happy with what we've seen. It maybe doesn't gel with what I thought his character was for years and years and years. But one other thing I think we were going to bring up about the timing of the show is one day after enough for people to have seen it and catch up, on a Thursday night. So
So we may look at doing these episodes on the following Monday, if that makes sense. That's not next Monday, the Monday after. So give people a bit more time to watch it. But tonight we wanted to get through it quickly because as we discussed earlier, everybody should have watched it on day one. So we may not be back next Thursday. It might be the following Monday, if that makes sense. But keep your eyes open. We'll be back. So don't stress.
So if anyone's got any feedback about speak up now while we're sort of talking, just so we get an idea.
You're not going to get much time because I was just about to finish. So there you go.
There you go. What do you
any final words? Sorry, any final words about the...
Well, just final words. Sci-fi shows are notorious for having a poor pilot and then the series takes off. I think this was a good pilot. I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'm going to follow the same thing. Someone actually said that if The Mandalorian didn't exist and this was the pilot episode to try and generate funds for a new series, some people thought it wouldn't get picked up. So make it that what you will. So either way, it's worked for a lot of people, but it hasn't worked for everyone. And I think that's actually quite important. So we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to buzz off now. We'll leave your tour. We'll either be back next week or the week after, but we will be back for the second episode of the Book of Boba Fett. And we'll have to see how it all goes. So in the interim, see you later. Catch you next time.
Have a good night.